I'm just curious how they're going to handle the name reveal in a way that doesn't seem ham-fisted.
Yeah. You're talking about Star Trek Into Darkness is what you're talking about whenever you say something like that.
It will not be that bad. It cannot possibly be that bad.
My name is Khan.
I would have agreed with you, Morgan, until they fridged Bronwyn.
Oh, you know what?
So
I sit corrected.
I know they're capable of bad writing, of truly bad writing now.
Okay. Jackass.
Can I admit to a weakness when it comes to fantasy?
Sure.
Sometimes it takes me a long time, and I even have to make effort outside of watching the show to learn characters' names.
Oh yeah, I'm the worst.
I don't remember this dude's name.
You could be forgiven for not remembering this guy's name, because up until this episode, he wasn't doing much of consequence. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he definitely did something of consequence now. Hold on, I'm gonna pull up a photo of this fucking guy so everybody knows what we're talking about.
This fucking guy.
This is
fucker.
He's the spirit of Jeffrey Baratheon fucking personified. He's reincarnated.
Yeah.
Except when I used to sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say hats off to this actor, Leon Wadham, I think his name is. Because I have not hated an on-screen character this much since Joffrey Baratheon.
Right.
He's so hateable.
It's the same thing too, right? Except he's more of an adult than Joffrey was. It's like this weaselly, snivelly, fucking spoiled little prince bullshit.
Yeah, because at least Joffrey was a kid, and his parents were fucked.
I used to feel really bad about wanting to punch Joffrey in the face. I don't feel bad about wanting to punch this guy.
I want this guy's whole country to drown.
Oh no! God damn it, Morgan. You know what? Spoiler.
Spoiler. I feel you will get your wish. Not only do I want his whole country to drown, I want the entire world to be reshaped because of this fucker.
Because this fucker, he's gonna bend the world.
Yeah, I mean, so this was similar to in terms of setting off a chain reaction kind of thing. This could be compared to, what's his name, Jaime Lannister imprisoning Ned Stark or something, right? Sure. I mean, literally kind of the same thing almost.
Yeah, same sort of setup. Yeah.
Yeah. So, spoilers for those who have not watched the episode. First of all, we should put that out there.
Yes.
If you have not watched this episode of Rings of Power, then put us on mute right now.
Yeah.
But I'll point. Something happened in this scene that I think was aimed directly at the lore nerds again. The character he kills, Valandil, has the name of one of the sons of Isildur, and later becomes a king of Arnor in Middle Earth.
Right.
So a lot of lore nerds who hate the show spent all of the first season going, this guy can't be the Valandil because he's not this, But now
he's who Isildur named him after.
It's Isildur's best friend who just died. Yeah. And Isildur's going to name one of his children after his best friend.
Yeah.
Because that was the whole thing. They were really good friends.
Yeah. And I was really pissed that they killed this character because I liked him.
I liked him
a lot. And I had high hopes for him, and I was hoping they were going to build him up to be some kind of character of consequence. But nope.
No, he instead of he got the wrong RR writer, I guess.
I mean, I figured something was going to happen like that from the moment when early in the episode, whenever they're calling him captain after they told him not to. Yeah. So I was like, this is the kind of loyalty, defiant loyalty that's going to get somebody fucking killed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But how he gets got is why I want this guy's whole country to drown.
Yeah.
Because so our boy had this worm. This worm comes into a church and is just fucking knock it over. And bro grabs his sword, gets into a fist fight with him. This asshole draws a sword. The guy beats it out of his hands. And then has him at the sword point, and his captain is like, no, don't do it.
First what happens is this dude kind of gets a fucking bitch move on him, and it has him drowning him in the fucking pool right there.
Yep.
For a minute. Yeah. It kind of looked like it could go either way for a minute. Either way, however that fight turned out, if one of them died, it was going to be bad.
It was going to be bad. It was going to be really ugly. And so when he drops the sword and lets him live on his captain's order, and then fuckface here picks up his sword and runs him through the back like a fucking coward.
Oh yeah, what was his name? I'm sorry, the guy that died.
Valandil.
Okay, so he actually fucking dislocated his fucking arm too. This dude.
Yeah,
that was pretty cool.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, they're trying to like de-escalate the situation, and the priest of this church is like, can we at least keep our holy relic before you burn this place to the ground? And he's like, nah, and smashes it on the ground like a fuckface. And like, that's an ancient Numenorean relic that's ancient to the Numenoreans. So it's been like, it's old. It's a priceless relic.
Well, and like, yeah, I mean, it's just it sucks. This is the kind of person that like they don't really understand consequences the way that anybody else does, because things tend to work out in their favor just randomly, I guess. No, because so who is fucking Farazon? Is that his name?
Farazon.
Yeah.
Farazon is the last king of Numenor.
Farazon is as we've learned now, as people who don't know the lore are now learning. Numenorean society was divided into two broad factions: the faithful, who were led by Elendil and Queen Miriel, who stuck to the ways of the elves that they learned from the First Age and honored the Valar and so forth. And then there were the Kingsmen, led by Farazon, who were jealous of the elves' immortality and wanted to purge all elven influence from their society. Things get worse after this. In the original lore, Farazon forced Miriel. They were cousins.
Yeah, which they are in this.
Farazon forced Miriel into marriage so he could claim the throne of Numenor.
Ooh.
And
this is less rapey.
Yeah, this is far less rapey. And other shit happens that I know they're going to go into in future seasons, so I don't want to give too much away.
Yeah.
But I think that this particular character, Kemen, who is a character invented for the show, my fan theory is he is going to be one of the Nazgul.
That's a fan theory I've seen a lot, that he's going to be one of the nine.
We know
after that was part of this episode, was that we know we're going to be seeing him before too long.
Yeah. 3 of the Nazgul were Numenorean.
Yeah.
We don't know what their names were. So I think he's going to be one of them.
So I have a question for you guys.
Sure. I think the only one we know he isn't is the Witch King of Agmar, because we know that's a different person.
How do you guys feel that they've done with so like the actual creation of the rings is it's an interesting thing to focus on as like a plot to me. Like I would not have expected that at all. It's not anything I would have thought would be a way to base a show around that, or at least a season of it. But like, we know what the rings are, we know what the rings do, we know all this stuff, and yet we're seeing them being made, we're the people being deceived in various ways and stuff like that. Celebrimbor, definitely being deceived. I do feel like they're pulling that off pretty well with
I do.
I forget what name Sauron's going by, but
Anatar.
Yeah, Anatar.
Yeah, I do, because we don't actually know what the Rings of Power did. That's never described.
Yeah,
we know what the One Ring did, but all that's in the fake histories that Tolkien wrote is that Sauron crafted the Rings of Power by deceiving the elves and distributed them to men and dwarves who fell under his influence. Beyond that, we don't know what they did, except that the One Ring gave him the ability to control the wearers when he put it on. That's it. So I think it's really interesting to see, see them, I guess you could say, expanding the lore or coming up with their own fan fiction. I don't care how you phrase it.
It is flushing out an area of the lore that has not had details gone into.
Well, and actually, at first, so I kind of was before this episode, I was a little bit meh on the whole, ring creation subplot.
Sure.
Not that I didn't like it, I just was like, okay, so he's going to trick people. But like then it became more complex this time because we've now got the Elven rings, they're out there.
Yeah.
And then the Dwarven rings, they're out there now. And they're having their influence and stuff. But then at that point was whenever Durin started fucking noticing his dad's acting kind of wacky. And he goes back to Celebrimbor and he's like, hey man, these rings are fucked up, and you can't, don't give me more rings or whatever. And Celebrimbor, was like actually confronted Anatar, who successfully, after a while, they argued for a good bit, kind of exchanging words, and basically just appealing to his ego and appealing, like basically he's just desperate now, and he feels like he can fix whatever mistakes were done with the Dwarven ring. By making, 9 human rings, which is exactly what he didn't want to do in the first place. He was fucking dead set against it. And that's why I was like pretty impressed with the conversation and the way that it all played out, because I was like, okay, he did, for being the thing that he was dead set against, Celebrimbor originally, he's now charging full steam ahead, ready to do it. And then of course Anatar had that whole performance that he did. I'm not quite sure what he was doing there, but with the things going crazy in the forgery, in the forge area there.
So one of the assistants had a prototype ring.
Yeah, it was hard to catch because they cut. It was a weird bit of editing, but you can, when Celebrimbor grabs the hammer that's floating in the air, he slips the ring off of her finger, and you barely notice her becoming visible because they cut away too quickly. I don't know why. Maybe there was something wrong with the special effects, but if you pause it, it's like just a couple of frames, you see her appearing and stepping out of the shot. Oh. So it was the blonde who I think her name is Murdania, who
that's one
looks like
Galadriel.
Yeah.
Yes, she had a prototype ring on and had become invisible, so she was having the Frodo experience, of seeing the unseen world, and the demon she described was Sauron.
Right. Yeah, she saw Sauron. He just doesn't know it.
I saw this thing. It was crazy. He's like, oh, what?
I think he tries to convince her it's Celebrimbor's ego or something, and not like...
I can tell whoever wrote this episode has been in a relationship with a narcissist before.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why that was why it was pretty impressive, honestly. Is that it really is just like a narcissist convincing someone who started out thinking, no, this is bad, this is not good, I'm not okay with this, and then by the end he's just like, no, we have to do this shit, and that's just successful gaslighting.
Yeah, he made Celebrimbor think it was his fault.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's what it was. Yeah.
Like Celebrimbor's lie to the king is what tainted the creation of the Dwarven rings.
Right.
And gave him the choice. He gave Celebrimbor the choice. You can go tell the king what you did, or we can plow forward full steam ahead. And
or decided the best thing to do is just like be more deceptive, even more, and then that'll definitely make things better.
Right, but it's important that it was Celebrimbor's choice to do it. Celebrimbor knew. He says out loud, "If I tell the king, he'll never let me create anything again."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, you're right. I said it. We know what the rings did, but like we don't know other than just being kind of like slaved to the One Ring.
And right now the Dwarven rings aren't slaved to the One Ring yet because there is no One Ring yet.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So
we do know that the Dwarven rings made the kings of Khazad-dûm more greedy.
Oh yeah, we already see that for sure.
Here is one thing a parallel I noticed between the 3 and the 1 of the 7 we've seen so far that I liked and picked up on is that Durin the 4th, I believe, is our protagonist. Durin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Durin the Younger. They call him on the show.
Durin the Younger is like his friend Elrond, the one who's like, point of order, this is fucked, right? Like something is wrong here. And it takes everyone else a while to catch up with him. And I like that symmetry, that like these are the two that are like, no, this is not okay.
Yeah.
And then
Elrond is learning, and this is the other reason I think they've decided to. We haven't mentioned it on this stream yet, but the show has changed the order in which the rings are created in the lore. In the original lore, the Elven rings were created last, and without the influence of Sauron, the elves chose to make them without the influence of Sauron. And here they've reversed that and had them made first. And I think they've done that for narrative reasons so that they can have the characters come to see the differences between these rings. Because the audience will see the differences, will learn the differences through the experiences of the character they connect with.
Yeah.
Like Elrond is about to learn that the Elven rings are not tainted by Sauron and are going to have different effects, because we're seeing that Galadriel could easily give up the ring if she needed to.
Right.
She did it without hesitation.
Like their power is still addictive.
Yeah. The power is extremely tempting, but it's not addictive because they can give it up freely.
Right.
Addicts always say that though, Bob. I can give it up anything I want to.
But she did, right? That she and we know based on in Lord of the Rings, we know that Gandalf has the one that is right now worn by the shipmaker.
Yeah. Yeah. So the 3 Elven rings are free of the influence of Sauron. And as the characters on the show learn what that difference means, the audience will learn it along with them.
Right.
So it was good to create the Elven rings first, to have them there as a contrast.
So at what point do the Elven Rings become part of the kind of circuit, I suppose?
They don't.
They don't really. All that really happens is after Sauron creates the One Ring and he puts it on, the wearers of the Elven Rings become aware that he did it.
Right.
And they can see into his mind and he can see into theirs. But that's it.
I mean, that's
so
like
Galadriel also in the future expresses the fear that if Sauron were to reclaim the One Ring, he would be powerful enough to influence the three.
Yeah.
But that's more than he's grown powerful over time.
I sort of see this story about the creation of the rings as like a fantasy version of Oppenheimer.
A little bit.
You know, it's all about Celebrimbor is basically creating weapons of mass destruction. And it's all about the moral dilemma of doing that and the personal ambition that drives that kind of a decision. It's
interesting because he doesn't. We're like creating the bomb is creating the bomb, right? Like it's a bomb. Yeah. And even before then, we knew radioactive material was dangerous. He created the rings for perfectly understandable reasons that, if true, would hurt nobody, right? It was to heal the tree in Linden, so that the elves didn't have to go to the west.
Yeah.
Because Middle Earth is kind of fucked up, and it could use some repair, and these are, in theory, tools that can do it. But any tool that powerful is going to cause problems.
Yeah, that's one of the main themes. One of the consistent themes in Tolkien is that power always tempts you towards evil, no matter how virtuous you are. The more power you have.
When I was younger, I didn't really understand fully the reason why like Frodo was fucking actually influenced by the One Ring too. It's like, man, that must be powerful evil. Doesn't, you know? And I didn't fully understand the implications of that when I was much younger. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people, adults in the real world, don't seem to understand that either.
Well, I mean, I fully understand it now. Just like, you know, thankfully we didn't have to see Samwise, you know, get influenced by it. Anyway,
yeah, he did carry it long enough for the elves to allow him to go to the west at the end of his life.
Was it that, or was it just like the journey in general? I think was that what I always took from it. Just like
no, it's because he was a ring bearer.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and the only reason Sam didn't succumb to the power is that he didn't wear it long enough.
He didn't have it long enough,
or didn't carry it long enough. Excuse me. That's part of the narrative thread through the Lord of the Rings is that none of the characters in this book would have been able to freely give up the ring and throw it into Mount Doom.
Yeah,
it had to be
an act of
what saved the world was that Frodo made the choice to not kill Gollum. He showed mercy to Gollum, and that ultimately led to the Deus Ex Machina in the book of Gollum just dancing a little jig and tripping and falling into the lava.
Yeah.
Because he had won the fight for the ring. In the book, Frodo and him do not wrestle. Nope. Frodo loses that fight. Yeah, Gollum gets the ring and dances around, dances a little jig and slips and falls into the lava, which, knowing what Tolkien's theology was, and a lot of scholarship has been gone into this, the point Tolkien was trying to make there is that only God could have destroyed the ring. Right. Even Sauron could not have thrown it into the fires of Mount Doom. And so the power, the narrative device of the salvation of the world was an act of mercy by Frodo and the chain of consequences that come from that.
And that throughout the story, Frodo genuinely tries to do the right thing and be kind to everyone. Like, in terms of how like he treats other hobbits, how he treats with the elves he meets at the beginning of the story. Like, the chain of events based on his actions allow him to make it to that moment for that act of providence.
Yeah. Frodo is one of the three Christ figures in Lord of the Rings. Each of them represents one aspect of the Christ story, and Frodo is the one who bears the suffering of the world.
Yep.
Aragorn is the king who was promised, and Gandalf is the resurrected being.
Okay, well, let's talk about speak, friend, and enter.
They're pulling the door.
I was not expecting that. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I was. I mentioned it in last stream where when I let the lore nerd speak. When I mentioned that I was concerned about how much attention was being paid to the side quests on the show, and not enough was being devoted to the deepening ties between the dwarves and the elves. That was what I was thinking.
That's what you were thinking of.
I didn't want to give away any spoilers, but the creation of the doors was the thing that sealed the alliance between Khazad-dûm and Eregion.
Well,
that's going to have some interesting consequences.
Are you still under the impression that they're not doing a good job of that?
I felt they weren't doing enough. I didn't think they were doing a bad job, but
I kind of feel like the door does that, like exactly like it's just a symbolic. Okay, wow, they're really getting along now.
Yeah, and had they had more episodes to work with, I think we would have seen a lot of subplots of like, because one of the things we haven't seen is that there are supposed to be dwarves working in Celebrimbor's forge alongside him. So if we had more episodes to work with, we probably would have seen more subplots about friendships between elves and dwarves in that forge.
I think how he talks to that one dwarf whose name I didn't catch, but he talks to one of the dwarfs, the stonemason who made the doors, like they were friends. Like they had the way their dialogue was with each other gave the impression that these two have known each other for a very long time and are very close friends.
And you never know. We got 3 episodes left. There might be just like a quick scene where you see some working together in there, and then that's really
I would not be surprised if they are worked into the story as working on the 9, because it's
probably.
As Eregion becomes more isolated from the rest of the elves.
Well, and Celebrimbor said we'll do everything different.
Yeah,
the process is different. So might be.
I mean, I know what's going to happen big picture. With Eregion and the dwarves. I don't want to give away too many spoilers because I think if they pull it off,
it'll be really
cool. It's going to be awesome. I think the production team has already publicly put out that the Siege of Eregion, the battle for Eregion, is going to cover more than 1 episode.
Yeah.
At least 2, possibly 3 episodes.
That's going to be fucking awesome.
Yeah. So a lot's going to happen between elves, dwarves, and orcs at the level of politics and at the level of battle and all
especially with Adar being like, hey, Galadriel, like we can just talk because you and I have a bone to pick with the same motherfucker.
Yeah. Although he doesn't yet know that Halbrand is Sauron.
No, he doesn't. Boy, I wish he wishes he figured that out sooner.
I mean, like he had the chance, like he didn't believe he was Sauron
twice.
Right? Like,
I think he suspects Halbrand is Sauron, but when he has it confirmed, he's not going to take the news well.
It'll be too late.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry, maybe I'm misremembering what Sauron said in the first episode, but didn't he straight up say he was Sauron?
No.
Oh.
He said that he told Adar that there was a sorcerer working with Celebrimbor, who... I'm not sure he said the sorcerer was Sauron. He just let Adar believe that.
Involved with Sauron, like he hinted.
Yeah. And then I love the way they're writing Sauron, and I love Charlie Vickers' performance because he never outright lies to anybody.
No. He's so honest.
He swore to serve the Lord of Mordor until his dying day.
Yeah.
He didn't say I'm going to serve Adar. Yeah. So he let Adar think that Adar was sending him, Halbrand, as a spy into Eregion to feed him information about this sorcerer. And the sorcerer is him. And I think Adar is not a dummy. I think we've seen some hints that he kind of suspects that Halbrand was lying to him about that. But
especially because it's been a minute and they've been on March for a while, so it's like, my spy has not reported back to me. And a bunch of elves haven't shown up to kick my teeth in yet. I think fucker's playing me.
Yeah. I'm real interested to see how Galadriel and Adar interact going forward, because there are things Adar is willing to do that Galadriel will not be willing to do.
Yeah.
Even though they have the same enemy.
Adar is one of my favorite characters in this show because it's hard to pull off a villain protagonist.
Yeah.
And he very
this
much
show is doing it with 2 of them.
Yeah, he's one of 2 villain protagonists of this show. But they do it really well, and they're playing off each other, and it's spicy.
Has nobody had anything to say, or is chat broken? What's going on here?
Chat is. Let me refresh. The chat's just really quiet.
Yeah, have we just been talking to ourselves the whole time?
There's 31 people watching. Chat, if you're alive.
Sound off, chat. Can you hear us? I can hear all.
Who's been enjoying the Rings of Power show?
Yeah.
What?
Maybe.
I'll say like this last episode was one of the best ones so far, I think.
Yeah,
it absolutely was.
The video is still playing. Oh, Maestro's still here.
Can you hear us, Maestro?
No, he's right there. Where are you at? What are you watching on?
Chat noises. I just opened up a YouTube tab to.
All
right.
Yeah, I agree. This is one of the best, not just one of the best episodes of this season. It's one of the best episodes of this entire show.
That's what I mean. Yeah, for sure.
So far,
really
and
it was a good balance. Like there was a few moments of action. There was, really good action. Actually, action that that propels the plot forward quite a bit.
Yeah.
This show,
and they're starting to pay off seeds that were planted in the first season.
Yep. This is, if there is, if I could sit down the Lucasfilm and the Disney Plus execs and be like, this motherfuckers is why you just renew shows for a second season. This is a master class, and like set them up in one season, knock them down in the next.
You choose your show, your creators very carefully, and then let those fuckers cook, man. Have some faith in them. They might not always, they might not always win out, but like you're fucking Disney, you're multi-trillionaires. You can do it. You're fine.
Yeah, you've got more money than God.
So a lot of people in chat are saying they're not actually watching the show; they're just here for
positive
fandom.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, man.
That's awesome. You rock.
Yeah, we're happy we could provide.
Yeah. If you get a chance to, if you get access to Amazon Prime from a relative or something, then I would check it out. It's unlike a lot of, I think one of the things I really appreciate about this show, especially in this episode, is how long the episodes are.
Yeah.
Is that like there was a moment in this episode, and I don't quite remember which one it was because it's been a few days since I've watched the episode. There was a moment where I'm like, if this were a Disney Plus streaming show or a Netflix show, it would have ended here and been much worse for it.
Yeah.
Because I think what it was the moment when, because initially Celebrimbor was like, I'm going to go to Linden and I'm going to talk to Gil-galad and let him know something has gone awry.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, boy, in a Disney Plus show, this is where they end the episode. And then it keeps going. And you get the twist of the manipulation, and the rest of the plot plays out after that moment, and you get this heart-wrenching ending, and I'm like, this is how a streaming show should be. You aren't limited in a time frame to a 46-minute episode, much less a 38-minute episode like a bunch of the Marvel shows are. Like,
well, I mean, to be fair, I think that a lot of shows have done that type of thing just because we kind of have almost like our wired by TV timings to like think of a show and feel like we can feel it whenever a show is getting to be longer than 45-50 minutes sometimes. But I mean, that was I think better for transitional state from network TV to streaming, and now we're past that. I think we should just do shows however long you want to.
I think make the episodes how long it may. Like, don't let them. Like, I would say more than like if you hit 90 minutes, just make a movie. But like this, like 110 minute episode, and that's like you've got 5 minutes of credits afterwards, anyways. So like,
yeah. This show gives
them so much time to play.
Each episode of this show is roughly 10 to 15 minutes longer than the average episode of other shows that have the same number of episodes. So like The Acolyte, I think, did they have 8? Yeah, they had 80 episodes, just like this one does. But their episodes were like 38 to 40 minutes long.
Yeah.
And this show has an additional 10 to 15 minutes per episode, which is the equivalent of just having
another episode or two
in terms of its runtime.
One last thing I think really that we have to talk about. Is there just like Disa? She's just hearing some random echoes, right? Nothing really big, not a big deal down there, right?
I'm sure it's fine.
It's just not like you acting crazy. What are you doing talking about something down there? No, there ain't nothing down here.
Yeah, and that touches on something else I started noticing in this episode. I think one of the themes they're trying to do in this episode is women not being believed when they say things that are obviously true. Because nobody's taking Disa seriously about that. People weren't listening to Galadriel, even though Galadriel fucked up, and everyone acknowledges that. But she was still right about Sauron being back.
Being alive and
like she was too high off the ring to communicate that effectively.
Yeah,
like I think that's like she was right, but she was
she was too trauma driven in the first season, and everyone was used to her doing that. So I think everyone else was like, she does not have good threat analysis skills and is chasing shadows and stuff. But she turned out to be right, and people aren't listening to Disa, and so forth. So that could just be something I'm noticing, but yeah.
No, I think you're right.
A lot of people, a lot of the chatter online among the lore purists is concerned about that storyline, the Disa storyline, because the Balrog that we saw in the beginning in the first season
is Durin's Bane,
and in the official timeline that Tolkien wrote, it's not supposed to be unleashed until the Third Age. But it looks like they're going to have it unleashed sometime during this show.
Well,
which I'm okay with. I mean, I don't.
Yeah,
as long as it's well executed,
as we
I don't
talked
care.
about before, it's a living, breathing document that can be, changed and stuff. Maybe it's going to be like something like maybe we get to see the Balrog, because I hope so. But also maybe it doesn't make the record books, so to speak.
It may also be that with the dwarves' attention-driven surface word, that it becomes an ignored problem. Because if I recall correctly, Durin's Bane enslaves a bunch of orcs to go kick it over. He doesn't do it himself.
So what do we think? Got any predictions? Well, no, not you, Bob, because I know you probably know exactly what's going to happen. But if there's anything that you don't know is going to happen, but you kind of wonder or think it might happen, is there anything that you...
Well, I think that the death of the Landil tells us that none of the non-canon characters are safe.
They're hyper expendable.
Whoa, that was a loud motorcycle. A lot of the non-canon characters in this show are some of the best characters in this show. Like Arondir and Adar in particular are really cool characters. And I am no longer certain they will survive this season. So I know what's going to happen big picture-wise in terms of like the geopolitics and the march of history and stuff. But when it comes to the fates of individual characters whose names don't appear in the lore that I really like, I have no idea what's going to happen.
Well,
so
let me guess based on like narrative, understanding narrative, right? It was like, so like Adar could do something like very heroic.
Possibly.
I think he might, I think he will go out like a champ.
Saving Galadriel or something.
I don't think he will save Galadriel. I think he would, if he has a heroic end, he would do something that's heroic from the point of view of the orcs.
Yeah.
Because the show has already given us sympathy for the orcs, and he'll see something happening that, at least from their point of view, is incredibly cruel and desperate, and he'll sacrifice himself to save them.
So
because his main loyalty is to them.
Right? Because he takes his title of Adar very seriously. Like, he very much sees himself as a paternal figure to the orcs.
Yeah,
and he genuinely cares about their well-being. It's just that the orcs are kind of fucked up.
What other characters are originally non-lore?
So Theo is non-canon. Kemen, that fucking guy. This fucking guy, Kemen, is not.
Guy is not. Yeah, I think he's gonna die. I think he dies before.
No, I think he'll become one of the Nazgul.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And Eärien, the daughter of Elendil, is not canon. In canon, he only had two sons, Anarion, who was mentioned in season 1 as being off at sea somewhere, and Isildur is his son. So the sister is a new character. Let's see. Arondir is a non-canon character. They killed Bronwyn off screen, for which I still haven't forgiven.
Oh yeah, the fridging. The fridging.
Yeah, Theo.
I mean, we haven't even what's his nuts doing much this season, so.
Yeah. Estrid, the love interest they just introduced for Isildur, is a non-canon character.
I think she's dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
So it's kind of weird that like we just had an episode that was really centered around Antar and Celebrimbor, and had a good bit to do with Numenor as well. So, but the next 3 episodes you think are going to be around Numenor? What are we just not going to get
around
more?
They're going to be around Eregion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Which is where Celebrimbor is.
This might have been the climax for the Numenor story this season. We'll probably see a little more of it, but I think the big thing has happened there for this season. Because I think what's going to happen is that Dude's daughter is going to... Because obviously he has men who are loyal to him. I think instead of them being executed, she is going to convince Farazan to exile them to Middle Earth.
Yeah, maybe. And I think she's also, they made her an architect for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's going to be involved in the building of a certain temple in a future season.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think ultimately she is going to, because I really liked how they wrote the scene between her and Elendil, where it was clear they were on different sides of this, but neither of them disowned the other person, right? So they obviously still love each other and are torn in their loyalties. And I think you're right. She'll be the voice of reason, quote unquote. That,
or at least sympathy.
That leads to the exile of the faithful.
Because those will go on to, spoilers for Lord of the Rings. They end up in what becomes Gondor.
Yeah, and Rohan as well.
Rohan and
Arnor. And Arnor. Yeah. Let's
So,
see, and Nori and Poppy are non-canon characters as well.
Well, yeah.
So I think Nori is obviously going to survive till the end, but I'm not sure about Poppy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm curious. I'm curious how that story is going to play out. 'Cause I think we're going to get one more episode, like episodes worth of content. It might be spread out over 2 episodes, but I think we are going to get a sizable wrap up for that story, where the Stranger and the Sorcerer of Rune are going to have a hoedown.
Yeah, the showrunners have said that the Stranger's identity will be revealed this season.
Okay.
And they're telegraphing that it's Gandalf,
which means,
and I'm sort of coming around to it probably is Gandalf. Last week I was
like once you said that, I started thinking about it, like, well, if you might be right, because like, why wouldn't they just go ahead and kind of confirm that to some degree? Why would they wait for him to? The only thing I can't think is my name, or whatever.
Yeah. Well, his given name was not Gandalf. That was a name given to him.
That's true.
I think by the hobbits.
By humans or hobbits?
Oh, no, yeah, by humans. Yeah, by the people of. It was either Gondor or Rohan. I forget which, but his name that he went by was Olorin. So I think last week I thought he was Sauron. This week I think he's probably Gandalf, because this story is about the Rings of Power, and one of the Elven Rings of Power is given to Gandalf by Círdan, the shipwright. So why have a wizard in the show about the Rings of Power who isn't the wizard who ends up with one of the Elven Rings of Power?
I wonder if that ever plays, because we don't really know exactly the whole details of what drove Saruman. Like, we know the broad strokes, we don't know like the intricate personal details. I wonder if, because like Saruman is said to be an expert in like ring lore, in Lord of the Rings, that's why Gandalf goes to talk to him. I wonder if part of his reason for falling is that here's the world's biggest ring lore nerd in Middle Earth, and his coworker has a ring of power and he does not.
Yeah, that could be. So anyway, I think the Stranger is Gandalf, and he probably will not be called Gandalf.
No.
Like Tom Bombadil is going to either reveal his name to him somehow or catalyze him remembering his name, and when his name is spoken, it won't be Gandalf.
No.
He will then get named Gandalf by the Harfoots.
Yeah.
Afterwards.
Okay.
Probably by the Harfoots or the humans.
Yeah. But
I would
they're going to make it clear.
Yeah, I imagine the Harfoots will call him by his given name just because he will introduce himself as that.
Yeah.
And then he will earn the epithet Gandalf later on at some point in a future season.
But it will be clear to the audience that, yes, this is Gandalf, although he's not going by that name right now.
Right.
Well, I mean, I thought it was clear in the freaking finale when he's like, what was it? There was like something
He says a Gandalf line.
Yeah, very Gandalf.
He says many Gandalf lines. Always follow your nose.
Yeah. I think that was the one he said to Nori at the end of the first season.
Yeah, he was very much giving Gandalf the whole time. But there's some ways where it doesn't really make sense for him to be Gandalf, and others where it does make sense. So I think it was clever for the first season, but they really need to get on with it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was about to say, if they didn't reveal what the deal this season, then there better be some significantly wild reason why.
I think one thing I like about them giving it an extra season to sort of cook on who he is something I like about what it says about his power is that his power is uncontrollable. Not that he so in Lord of the Rings, Gandalf, when he loses his staff, doesn't use any magic, and that's a weird, right? And I like how this show is the reason why that is because his power is so great that he uses the staff as a limiter.
Right.
Yeah.
It isn't
basically a channeling thing that it's a governor form.
Right. And he's trying to summon the storm and it starts to work, and then the shepherd's crook falls apart and the storm goes out of control.
And goes crazy. Yeah. And then he almost kills, his companions, which I'm sure was a traumatic thing that would make you want to be more careful.
Well, I think the first thing he asks Tom is, have you seen these two? I'm looking for my friends.
Yeah, because I kind of blew them away.
I may have blown them away.
Yeah, I'm just curious how they're going to handle the name reveal in a way that doesn't seem ham-fisted.
Yeah. So you're talking about Star Trek in the Darkness, is what you're talking about whenever you say something like that.
It will not be that bad. It cannot possibly be that bad.
My name is Khan.
I would have agreed with you, Morgan, until they fridged Bronwyn.
Oh, you know what?
I know they're capable of truly bad writing now.
Well, I mean, speaking of which, there was an example, apparently, of actual bad writing in this episode. Yeah. I showed you guys. You saw it.
Yeah.
It was right at the beginning of the episode, too.
I don't remember.
As you know line.
As you know. As you can see. As you can see.
Right.
What was his name? I forget that dwarf's name. Something with a
Narvi.
name. Narvi, that's what it was. He tells Durin, the elder, it's as you can see, we've blah 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 talking about the mines, and I saw somebody posted that oh, look at this is just such a well-known don't do this in writing kind of thing, and I was like, really? And I look it up and it actually is. That's true.
It happens all the time in TV. It happens all the time in TV.
I mean, if you're looking for that and you're kind of pouring over episodes to kind of oh, look, bad writing, well, then you're probably, even if that is technically an example of that type of thing, in most cases, these are not rules that are hard rules. They can be bent, they can be broken, depending on how they're done.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for it like that, then you're probably going to be just uncharitable to anything.
Yes, exactly. It doesn't break the rules, because the rules are really more just suggestions.
Because in reality, people do say that phrase. So if you're trying to write realistic, these two rules are incongruent. You can't say I like characters that speak, like real people do, but never say as you can see, because people say that.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, that was going to be my point. It's contextual, and part of it is that we don't really know that character Narvi very well. That could just be the way that character talks.
Right.
But we haven't gotten to know him, so we don't really know.
I can tell he's torn between the Durins. That's all I really know about him. Character.
Yeah, and another good example, and this is worse. When you first told us about that, I said it's that happened.
Yeah. So
is that which was used in a thing, or is that something that just became a
I don't know how that became a thing, but it was used in an episode of Strange Star Trek Strange New Worlds, the musical episode. And when it happened, I went, oh my god, they did not do that.
Why is this here?
Yeah, but even in that episode,
it
was. I think it was done with a wink, because even in that episode, it made sense, because that is that whole episode was campy. So
So
but in this context.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
In this context, I think within the context of the scene that we saw, that character saying, as you can see, X, made sense, because the viewer doesn't know that.
So
can't actually see that.
Master, what it is it, generally speaking, if you're writing a script, and meaning you're writing for something that's going to be presented on in video format, you shouldn't have to say what you're showing, telling the audience literally, as you can see. It's just a weird kind of I guess maybe immersion breaking thing sometimes.
Yeah. So it's more an issue in written stories where you should be using your narration to set the scene, rather than a character in the story going, here is the, your character should be talking about the plot, not the scene.
Right. But in this
your
case,
character shouldn't be aware of the scene. They should be advancing the plot. In a TV show, it's different because it's visual. And sometimes you need someone to explain the plot. It is bad writing, but also, all of Star Trek is full of as you can see, or as you know. Star Trek is lousy with as you know.
Yeah. And in this scene, it made sense, because the reason As You Can See is considered bad writing in most cases in television is that when a character says that, they're referring to something on screen that is already obvious to the viewer if they're paying attention. Mm-hmm. And in this scene, it's not obvious what's going on because dwarves are always hitting the walls with
We've seen a lot of dwarves hitting walls. That's not
Plus the angle of the camera is not pointing at the thing he's talking about. Like we're kind of looking at them instead. The wall is over to the side.
Mm-hmm. So it could have been handled better. It was clunky writing. I wouldn't say it was outright bad.
That's really what it is, because bad doesn't apply really.
I would call that sort of writing inefficient writing.
Yeah.
Just because but in the scene, because it's a person, an authority figure has arrived here to receive a report. This person has arrived wanting to know what's going on, and so there is a person explaining to him what is going on. So it does make sense, but it is one of those reality isn't realistic things. Where if my boss walked in and asked me to take him a tour of somewhere and explain to him what's going on, I would probably do it exactly like that character did in the show.
Yeah.
But I'm not a character in a show, except this show.
Yeah, I referred to it in the Discord as a variation on the Tiffany problem, which I was surprised to learn that y'all didn't know what that was.
I didn't know what it was.
But it's a convention in writing that, broadly defined, would be something that is actually realistic or accurate, but because of social conventions feels anachronistic to an audience.
Yeah.
And the reason it's called the Tiffany problem is because the name Tiffany in the English language actually dates back to medieval England.
Mm-hmm. But
it arose
we think of it as like a 90s Valley Girl or something like that.
Right. So somebody writing a historical fiction or a fantasy based on that period of time who included a character named Tiffany would be historically accurate, but modern audiences would think it was weird. Just because of the modern associations that name has.
It reminds me of something I've talked about in people role-playing game groups where people will complain about a fantasy system that has guns but has halberds. It's like, well, if it has halberds, it can have guns. Those are historically congruent things. Guns are slightly older than halberds.
Yeah, full plate mail, as fantasy role-playing game people understand it visually, didn't exist until after the invention of guns. Mm-hmm. But we all think it happened before.
Right.
Because of conventions of storytelling that we've inherited over the years.
And so there's not a lot of heroic tales of a guy shooting someone with a gun until we get to the 18th century. When you get Napoleonic Wars and the American Revolution. That's sort of when guns start to become mythologized, but before that, not really.
Yeah. So the use of "as you can see" is like that. It's something that people really do say. Yeah. And that would have valid uses in actual conversations, but somehow TV writing just adopted the convention that it's bad writing, so they never do it.
Yeah, I think they adopted it from written stories, where where most writing conventions are that you use your narration to set your scene, and you use your characters to advance the plot. And if someone is giving an "as you can see" speech, they're doing the wrong thing with the wrong tool.
Yeah.
Another
Chud talking point debunked. Mm-hmm. Trollkins.
What's funny is I didn't even see a Chud saying that necessarily. I just happened to see it in my Reddit scrolling in the Rings of Power subreddit too.
It's one of those things that I think it's an actual criticism, and we can discuss how valid or not valid it is. But I think it's worth discussing because we're talking about the history of how we tell stories and writing conventions.
Well, and then also it's worth discussing because even though it is a somewhat legitimate thing to even discuss, unlike most Chud complaints, Chuds very well could and probably are somewhere using this as an example.
I haven't seen it.
I assumed that was what was happening because I'm so used to the complaint of so-called bad writing being thrown out by Chuds, and
somehow they missed the one instance of bad writing.
Yeah, they've kind of poisoned the well when it comes to criticizing shows like Rings of Power or a Star Wars TV show, because any legitimate criticism that could be put forward that isn't necessarily a deal breaker for watching the show just gets dismissed, because most of the people who complain about bad writing are just doing it in bad faith.
Right. And when we have an actual instance of something that you could call bad writing or matches the convention of what has been called bad writing, Chuds aren't interested in having a discussion about the nuances of script writing versus novel writing, like us fucking nerds are.
Yes.
I'm sure Bob and I could talk about this topic for another hour and drive Dane insane.
Yeah.
Huh? What?
As you
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm gonna get out of here. You guys want to talk for another hour? I'll let you go. But
Nah, I got.
No, we're good.
Alrighty. That's the key, right? Ask them to give an example of what they think is bad writing. Explain. And this is what we were talking about. Bob, you were talking about it with you, in fact. And I did a whole video on this stuff, man. I think I need to cover it again, like intentionally, because that was just really live stream, kind of me and Little Movie Perp talking about it, looking at what other people say about it, which is a valid thing. But I think I have stuff to write about these concepts now, 2 years later. Wow. I should probably get on that. But.
Yeah, I think it can be an effective tactic. I'll give this to the audience. It's a gift. It can be an effective tactic when dealing with, maybe not necessarily with the Chud content creators themselves, but when their audience shows up in your feed, calling something you like bad writing or something, ask them to explain how is it bad writing,
right? And
give them a reference point to an actual tome on writing. Like my example is always Save the Cat, which is a famous screenwriting book that goes through the nuts and bolts of writing a screenplay, and ask them, show me with reference to this source how this is bad writing.
Well, that's why they don't like. That's why they don't want to come on and have a conversation on streams. That's why they want to just say things in chat and replies and stuff, and not any further, because they don't have to be accountable for their bullshit. If you're having to answer verbally and people are like listening to you, then you got to have something. You say something, man. Defend this shit. But they can't. They know they can't.
And this is something that people who make 6-hour stream videos complaining about bad writing ought to be able to do.
Well, let's just make sure everybody knows that this is Bob of the old ways saying this right now.
That's right.
Bring him your worst.
Mauler. Say his name 3 times and he appears.
Oh God, it's fucking Beetlejuice.
People like that. People who devote 6 hours of stream time complaining about bad writing and never once refer to the craft of writing as it's defined in books like Save the Cat or the Screenwriter's Bible or any of those things where they can talk about the nuts and bolts are just like giving away the game. The longer the content and the more they complain about bad writing, about being specific, the less they actually know.
Yeah, it shouldn't take you that long to say what you don't like about things unless you're literally, just the concept of every frame of pause. I was talking to my girlfriend about this earlier. It's like, that's not how movies are watched, dipshit.
Yeah.
That's literally the opposite of what a movie does. You're not supposed to watch one frame, because that's why they exist, is so that multiple frames can play in rapid succession, creating a moving picture.
Yes. Movies are composed of scenes, not frames.
Right.
Yeah.